Klal Yisrael developed as a nation, starting with the Avos and Moshe Rabbeinu and the Shibud Mitzrayim. What was the purpose of all of that? Yetzias Mitzrayim was to serve as the means by which Klal Yisrael become a Kli Chefetz, which is the Beis Halevi talking. Asher Ayod Ham Niskadol Kvoidai Yisbarach Ba'yidei Hatzalasam Mitzrayim Nisparsem Shmai. The whole purpose of Shivas Mitzrayim, actually I shouldn't say the whole purpose, one of the main purposes, let's not limit it, is that Klal Yisrael became the means to which Kadosh Baruch Hu's name became great. So we became the ultimate Kiddush Hashem, and this could not have happened if Yaakov would have stayed in Eretz Yisrael. Israel's tumultuous beginning combined a struggle for physical survival together with a spiritual reawakening, which is very rarely happens in history, where there's a spiritual, people have a tremendous rise in their ruchnius at the same time as their gashmius. So this was a relatively unique event in history. Now we have difficulty to differentiate between these two processes at the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Okay, now, when was Klal Yisrael born? Was it with Avraham Avinu? Was it with Binyamin, when all the Shiftei Kol were born? There are many Mefarshim who feel that the period of Yud Nisan through Tesvav Nisan, Yetzias Mitzrayim, represents Klal Yisrael's true birthday in a physical sense. The Shabbos HaGadol of that year, which was Yud Nisan, was great, according to one Pshat, because of Klal Yisrael's leap of faith in challenging Egypt's God before their very eyes. As the Medrash tells us, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe Shichitu HaPasach. Amar Le Hashem, so Moshe Rabbeinu answered Hashem, Hey Nizbach Tovs Nitzrayim Le'neim V'lo Yiskaluna, they'll kill us. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu responds to Moshe, Chayecha, Hashem says, Kavyochal, I swear, Ein Yisrael Yotzim Mikan Ashichtu Barazar Shalem Le'neim, which we know is a very famous part of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Beis Halevi, a very long Beis Halevi, and that his ultimate point, he says, is that we are becoming a Am Segula at that point of time. As Shlomo Hirsch proclaims, with Korban Pesach, Hashem laid the foundation of a nation, a people, a social community, a state. This is straight from Shlomo Hirsch. Now, we're not being Israel, a distinct people living a separate community in Mitzrayim, or even before Korban Pesach, and their significance was considerable in Mitzrayim. The Mitzrayim hated us. So it's interesting. Of Simoy says by Nasa v'Nishma, v'Shoshi Tima Yisrael Nasa v'Nishma, the some of Rivo Shel Malachei Asharis v'Koshvu Kolechem Yisrael Shnei Ksar, which we all know, Echa Keneged Nasa, Echa Keneged Nishma. With this tremendous accomplishment, Israel's response to the Hashgacha Pratis and the revelation of Har Sinai was strictly limited to this one statement and no more. This was not a passive Kabbalah Torah, required active acceptance. But we know that Kabbalah Torah was very limited. It says they were not allowed to go up on Har Sinai, Big Balta Zahar. They can't get up there. And nobody was allowed to go up there. So therefore, we know that there was a certain aspect of Kabbalah Torah, which was Hashem doing the work, and we were Makabal the Torah. Yes, there was a tremendous hashkafa, there was tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. Then, of course, came the Chet Egel, which was shlugged up much of what was accomplished at Sinai. What did Kadosh Baruch Hu do to bring us back to that level? As we all know, Hashoras Hashchina, which occurred in the Mishkan. The building of the Mishkan took a time, and it took Klal Yisrael's incredible ability to build the Mishkan, and to fulfill the mitzvah of Mishkan and Karbanos. Now we became partners with Hashem. Hashem told us, you do this, now we're going to do something. We're actually going to do something, as opposed to Kabbalah Torah, where we were just sitting back and we were accepting it. However, what's fascinating is is that there's an even higher madrega. If we look at the Torah, and we're finally getting to the Parsha, we see the chronology of the Torah at the completion of the Mishkan, which was at the end of Pekudei, at the end of Shmais, and in Parshas Behaloscha, there's no time lapse. There's exactly the same story continues. And Shmais it says, "Who come Mishkan?" And Bamidbar says, "Yom Hakim is Mishkan, Kisa Anan is Mishkan Lo'el Ha'edos." We're back to the end of Shmais here in this week's Parsha Behaloscha. Now, what happened at that point? Right after we hear what's the next thing that the Parsha talks about? Interesting. We should do the Korban Pesach. By the way, the only bringing of the Korban Pesach in the 40 years in the Midbar, there was only that one time. Why that is for another drasha. But right now, this minute, Hashem said, I want you to bring the Korban Pesach. What happened? What happened? There were those people who couldn't do it. There were Anoshim who were unable to do the mitzvah. Which means, for whatever the reason, their kedusha was at a level that they could not bring the Korban Pesach. What did Hashem give them the opportunity to do? Hashem gave them the opportunity of Pesach Sheni. Now, if I ask any one of us, what is the most profound relationship that we could have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Well, you could say, we could confidently say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming down to Olam Hazeh to dwell among us. However, as for Yidden with a good hashkafa, there is an even greater relationship, and that is for us to seek out HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not wait for Hashem to come to us. That's fascinating. Rabban Soloveitchik Zatzal gave a drasha once in Kew Gardens, and he alluded to this thought. The Caesar, the Roman emperor, who was a Russia who eventually killed Rabbi Akiva, but during their debates, asked Rabbi Akiva a fascinating question. In your opinion, which are greater, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's achievements or man's achievements? That's what the case was. It's a Befersha Gemara. I've seen it. I heard it from Aram the first time, but I saw it subsequently on my own. So Rabbi Akiva, instead of just jumping out with an answer, said, give me 3 days to give me back the answer. He said, okay. And he came home and he told his wife to bake her finest cookies and finest cakes, which she was famous. Make it especially good, he said, because they're for the Kesar. Thus motivated, she outdid herself. The next 3 days, she did a magnificent selection of baked goods. She arranged them masterfully in a basket, and Rabbi Akiva began the trip back to the palace. On the way back, he stopped along the roadside and picked up some pebbles and rocks and schmutz and put them in the basket on the side. When he got before the Kesar, he said to him, do you have the answer to my question? Which are greater, God's achievements or man's? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or God's achievements or man's? Akiva said the answer's in the basket. He offered the basket to the ruler and said, try a cookie. Oh, these are delicious. Then he told him to take a little bit of the sand and the schmutz, and he took some of the sand and schmutz and he spit it out. There's your answer, he said. You see whose achievements are greater. To which the Kesar replied, you are wise, Rabbi Akiva. Had you answered that God's achievements are greater, which all of us would have said, I would denounced you for doing bris milah on your children. Who are you to think that you can improve what Hashem does? In a similar fashion, Hashem wants man to achieve the level of kedusha that may come to him, even to dwell in his midst, but man is capable of even more than this. Hashem wants to come and b'shachanti b'socham. Hashem wants even more than that. He wants man to come to him. And that's what happened with Korban Pesach Sheni. People came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, Lama Nigora, we want to have an opportunity to serve Hashem. They came up and said, we want to come to Hashem. Hashem said, you're right. I'm going to give you another chance. Of course, everyone knows that Pesach Sheni represents that we always get another chance. But in the realm of what I'm saying to you here, this represents man's striving to come close to Hashem, which we feel, and which I feel, which the thrust of this talk is even a higher madrega than Hashem wanted to come to us. And that's what Hashem really wants from us. Hashem wants us to reach that madrega, that we want to come close to Him, doing more, in the footsteps of the Torah, doing exactly what the Torah tells us. We could compare this to Noah and Abihu, who also wanted to do more, but they did it outside the boundaries of what is acceptable. We cannot do more than Hashem tells us to do. And these people did it right, whoever they were the Nasi Art of Yosef, or people who were the Tamei Mace Mitzvah, whatever the case may have been. But they came to Moshe and said, what can we do? And Hashem said, you know what? You deserve a mitzvah that I'm going to give, an extra mitzvah in the Torah in your schus. I'm going to give you Pesach Shem. So it was the merit of their wanting to come close to Hashem, which we have in this week's Parshas Behaloscha. We see what man's opportunities are. Man's opportunity through Avodas Hashem to come close to Hashem and to strive to be greater and greater. Good Shabbos.